everybody, New Jersey forensic accountant. Today we're going to talk about goodwill. Goodwill is often used a lot, but in the context of this video, what we're going to really talk about is when you buy a business or sell a business, what is goodwill? And this is a two-part video. I'm going to do one on in litigation, which this is about, because this comes up quite a bit in litigation, and one on when you buy or acquire a company. Now, the first question is, what is goodwill? And the definition is that it's basically intangible assets. Now, if you buy a company and you mark everything up to fair market value, you go through the cash, the receivables, the inventory, some equipment, you make that all fair market value, and then you subtract the liabilities, and there's a difference there. So if you're buying a business for $1 million, but all those assets only add up to $800,000, well, what are you going to do with the $200,000? And what they do is they call goodwill. Now, how do you treat that? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. So key aspects of goodwill. Okay, it's an intangible asset, right? It's something you can't see. It's only recorded in acquisitions. We do look at it in divorce because we're assuming it's an acquisition for the divorce, but it's only it can't grow. Goodwill doesn't grow. You can't say, well, my goodwill's X amount. Someone comes and buys your company, they pay a lot more than the tangible assets. That's goodwill. Calculating, obviously, we talked a little bit about that. If the identifying assets are $7 million, there's a difference of $3 million. That's the goodwill. Types of goodwill. This is tricky here because you have enterprise goodwill, which is tied to the business itself, location, reputation, trained workforce, right? That's important. And personal goodwill. With smaller firms like a CPA firm or a law firm or an architectural firm, a lot of times all the goodwill is personal, right? If that person leaves, the business is not going to have any clients who they're there because of him. So this is important, but it's hard to determine what is personal goodwill and what's not, what's enterprise goodwill. But it's kind of a fuzzy area because basically if you look at this, every small business is worth nothing because it's mostly personal goodwill. Unless it's like a manufacturing company with 100 employees and equipment in a building, obviously there's enterprise goodwill there. And if the owner leaves, maybe no one's going to notice, a few clients. But, so this is kind of a tricky concept, but very important in litigation. Now, when you buy a company, and we're going to go through this, you have to, especially for public companies, you got to be able to explain, well, we pay $10 million for this business, but the assets are only worth $8 million or $10 billion, and the assets are only worth $8 billion. What's the other $2 billion? That's goodwill, right? It's a fuzzy type of thing. Why is it important? Okay, it's important because in M&A, companies are buying a lot more than the assets listed on the balance sheet and the liabilities. So it's a significant part of the purchases. It's very critical in shareholder disputes and divorce and financial reporting. In accounting, it affects balance sheets and how do you treat the goodwill? You can amortize it. And again, we have two videos. This video is really dealing with litigation. So I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so when you have a shareholder dispute, and there's two different types of classifications, goodwill and personal goodwill, well, what do you do? And again, it depends on the state. New Jersey doesn't really recognize goodwill. They're not going to let you, because like I said, every divorce and every dispute, there would be no compensation because they're saying, well, it's all personal goodwill. It just doesn't work out. We have something called value to the holder in New Jersey where if you do get divorced, you can't say the business is worth nothing because it's personal. And the difference between personal goodwill, these distinctions are, like I said, they're critical, especially in closely held firms. How do you tell the difference? Personal and good, right? Value attributed to individual personal reputation skills. Is it transferable? Generally not. Often valued separately? Yes. Enterprise. The value attributed to the business. Is that transferable? Yes. Right? If I buy a business and I know that the owner has a lot of personal goodwill and he leaves, Well, I'm buying nothing, right? I'm just buying, so I wouldn't pay a lot for that. So it's an important concept from that standpoint. But let's talk a little bit about like a real world example. So let's say you have a dental practice, okay, and he's very good. If someone was to buy that dentist practice for, let's say, it's worth $1 million, okay, but they realize that 50% of the clients are there because of that dentist, and they leave. Well, they're not going to pay $1 million for that practice. And many courts often exclude personal goodwill from marital estate division or divorce. Not New Jersey, but again, if I'm a dentist and I'm getting divorced, my wife's going to get nothing because they're going to value the company so low because most of that is personal goodwill. How is that fair? You have somebody, a spouse, that help you build this practice up by taking care of the kids or taking care of making sure you're ready for work every day. 20 years later, you get divorced, and he's like, well, it's all personal good, you're getting nothing. So this is not really looked at in New Jersey for that reason, but there are a lot of states where personal goodwill is into consideration. So goodwill classification checklist. Now this is something you may want to is it indicating of goodwill or is it enterprise goodwill? Are customer relationships documented, handled by multiple staff? No. Well, that's goodwill. Yes, indicator that's enterprise, right? If you're just dealing with the owner, well, that's all personal. Is the business part of a franchise? Rarely, right? There's really not much personal goodwill there, right? It's a franchise. Often it is enterprise goodwill. So you can go through this checklist. But the main thing I want you to realize that in stockholder disputes and divorce, at least in New Jersey, personal goodwill does not come into consideration at this point because it would cause havoc. Every lawyer, every accountant, every architect who got divorced, the spouse would get nothing because they would all claim it's personal goodwill, which it probably is. So we have a different standard here. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, smash the like button. Thanks a lot.